Alright, short video. Just a question I've been thinking about when it comes to arm wrestling. You hear a lot of people say, especially, high up guys like Devin Larratt, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. I gotta say, I really hate that saying. Some people love winning at any cost. They don't care if they won because they cheated, they just want to win. Even if deep down inside they know that they really would not have won if it was, a fair match. But I've never really liked that phrase. I'm not a big fan of cheating. I like starting, ideally, in a perfectly neutral, perfectly fair setup. But that's just not the case, right? Very few people will sit there with a perfectly straight wrist, grab a hand, pretty much a ref's grip between the competitors without needing a ref. It's just not going to happen, right? So I think there's an in-between between doing nothing and if you're not cheating, you're not trying. And I think that in-between is probably where I like to sit, which is making sure that you get what you want without trying to put the other person at a disadvantage, right? It's just not allowing yourself to start with a disadvantage. And I think that's the boat that I'm in. I always try and practice not to start with a bent wrist in, especially against people that I know that I could, take to the pad fairly easily. If anything, I'll try and start with my wrist kicked back a little bit, because if not, you're not really getting a workout. What are you improving, right? So I think that's where I sit. I don't think I'm ever going to try and get an advantage in the setup that puts the other person at a disadvantage. But I am going to fight to get what I need to not be at a disadvantage. Again, I'm not going to try and put them at a disadvantage doing that, right? But so many times I've realized in the setup, people taking everything they can, knowing that it's putting me at a disadvantage. And I get it. People just want to win. But I like the idea of there being a little bit more honor in this battle on the table. I like it being a fair fight so that when it's over, I want to know that I either won or lost to the best that they had on the table. That makes sense. Because if you start with advantage and they start with disadvantage, you're not beating their best, right? And now beating their best doesn't mean that you have to start with that disadvantage so that they're, stronger than they normally are. Nope. I want to beat their honest, neutral, fair best. That's what I want to do on the table. Or I want to know that I lost without a disadvantage. That I lost with my best. Because I think that leaves everything on the table, right? There's no more leaving the table after a win or loss knowing that something wasn't fair, something wasn't even, there was something left on the table that wasn't taken, and there's always going to be that, at least in my head, there's always going to be that thought in the back of my head. So I don't like if you're not cheating, you're not trying, because it's a battle of honor on the table, really. This is a combat sport, right? Stabbing somebody in the back is coward's way of doing a lot of things. Not that there isn't the right place for that specifically in war, obviously. But when we're talking about arm wrestling, I don't want to beat somebody because they started with such a disadvantage they couldn't get into their strength at all. And I only won because, I cheated. And that's always going to nag at me in the back of my head is, would I have lost if I started fair? So I know a lot of people, they say, oh, well, the battle starts before, during the setup, before the go. The battle starts before the go. And I get that. But I think the battle should be getting to where neither of you are at a greater disadvantage or advantage than the other. I hate the thought of having to cheat, of having to, you know, manipulate people in the setup, especially people that are like newer, even if they're really strong. You know that your technique is better, but you're not as strong, so you know that you have to take something from them in order to win, and they don't understand what you're doing in the setup. You know, I mean, I've had that happen to me plenty of times in competitions already. So I am all for fighting in the setup, but not fighting to put the other person at a disadvantage. Just fighting to make sure that you are not at a disadvantage. So, I guess that's my rant for today.